silence of the heights is sometimes more frightening than the combat itself. That silence awakened, abruptly, by the heart-rending roar of a jet engine. At over 1,000 kilometers per hour, the rarefied atmosphere becomes a stage of life or death, where tracer bullets streak the sky like flaming serpents, seeking a target with deadly precision. Inside, the pilot, wrapped in his helmet, feels the sweat running down his face. A cold reminder of the thin line that separates triumph from annihilation. A millisecond of hesitation, a tiny mistake, and everything could dissolve into a hell of fire and metal. But in the midst of this chaotic battle, there it was. Steady, fast, and at times, untouchable. The legendary F-86 Sabre. A silent predator, an aerodynamic silhouette that imposed itself on the skies of Korea, defying the logic of destruction. While so many other planes went down in flames, plummeting in black smoke, the Sabre seemed to possess an almost mystical resilience, remaining standing even in the worst and most brutal battles. It wasn't just the mastery of its pilots, nor the superiority of its apparent design. There was something more, a secret, invisible to the outside world, a silent barrier erected between life and death, a shield that dared to defy the impossible, ensuring that the Sabre's roar was always a prelude to victory, not a mournful dirge. The Firewall. Today, we'll delve into the depths of this often forgotten innovation, revealing how this seemingly hidden and discreet piece of equipment was absolutely fundamental in paving the way for U.S. air supremacy during the Korean War. And most importantly, you'll understand why, quietly, the Firewall changed the history of military aviation forever, leaving a legacy that goes far beyond museums and the memories of pilots. The end of the 1940s marked a dark turning point in the history of humanity. With the end of World War II and the emergence of a new global bipolarity, the skies, previously limited by borders and more conventional strategies, became a vast new battlefield. The Cold War, in its silent escalation, demanded a new generation of weapons from world powers, and the United States knew it needed a fighter that could not only confront, but overcome the imminent and growing Soviet threat. It was in this scenario of tension and innovation that the F-86 Sabre was born. More than just an aircraft, it represented the pinnacle of aeronautical engineering at the time, a true technological jewel. Its design was revolutionary, standing out for its swept wings, which provided superior aerodynamics at transonic speeds, allowing for fast and efficient maneuvers. The cockpit, a high-tech environment for the time, was designed to optimize the interface between man and machine with an instrument layout that allowed the pilot intuitive control and quick access to crucial information. But what really set the Sabre apart in terms of lethality was its computerized targeting system, a marvel of military engineering that calculated, in real time, the ideal trajectory for its projectiles, dramatically increasing the probability of a hit. And at the beating heart of this machine was the General Electric J-47 engine, a powerhouse that spit fire and thrust, propelling the Sabre to dizzying speeds, making it a formidable adversary. The Sabre was not just an airplane, it was the bold and technologically advanced answer to the feared MiG-15, the newly introduced Soviet fighter that terrorized the skies with its blinding speed and aggressiveness in combat. The MiG-15 was fast, powerful, and lethal, and its arrival took the West by surprise. The arms race in the skies was at its peak, and air superiority had become a strategic imperative. But what no one, except the engineers and a privileged few, could see was that beneath the F-86 Sabre's gleaming fuselage lay an invisible defense, but one as lethal as its machine guns. A layer of silent protection that would prove decisive in the fiercest of battles.
Now,
Imagine yourself in the middle of an aerial combat. The deafening roar of the engine operating at the maximum limit of its capacity. The turbines spinning at unimaginable speeds, generating infernal heat. The fuselage, a structure of aluminum and metal alloys, shakes violently under the impact of the gusts of wind and the sudden maneuvers. Inside, the internal heat of the aircraft reaches unbearable levels, a portable furnace that threatens to melt the systems and compromise the structure. In this scenario of extreme pressure and prohibitive temperatures, many aircraft of the time simply failed. Engines overheated and seized, electronic and hydraulic systems burned, failing irreparably, and pilots, in despair, were forced to eject, or, in the worst-case scenario, succumb to the catastrophic failure of the aircraft, turning into yet another explosion in the sky. But the Sabre, the F-86, remained. It kept flying, fighting, winning. Why? The answer, in fact, was the Firewall, an ingenious but incredibly effective solution. It was not a mere sheet of metal, but a meticulously designed high-strength heat shield strategically placed between the jet engine, which generated extreme heat, and the aircraft's vital internal systems, which were sensitive to high temperatures. Flight controls, electrical wiring, hydraulic systems, avionics, and even the pilot's instruments. This barrier, made of advanced materials capable of withstanding and dissipating heat, prevented the extreme temperatures generated by both the engine's maximum effort and explosions or combat damage from spreading to the aircraft's critical areas. It was like a fireproof vest, a heat shield embedded in the heart of the machine, protecting its vital organs. Without the Firewall, the F-86 Sabre would never have survived the prolonged and intense combat that marked the Korean War. This invisible protection not only ensured the structural and functional integrity of the aircraft, but crucially preserved the pilot's ability to maintain control, operate the systems, and, ultimately, survive and win.
Between 1950 and 1953, the war-torn Korean peninsula became an aerial theater of epic proportions. The skies over the MiG corridor, an infamous area on the border between North Korea and China, became the scene of an unprecedented technological and tactical duel. On one side, the MiG-15, fast, powerful in its climb, and heavily armed, often flown by experienced Soviet and Chinese aviators disguised so as not to provoke a direct confrontation with the United States. On the other, the F-86 Sabre, equally fast, but demonstrating superior agility in combat and, more importantly, an unmatched reliability that made it intrinsically more resilient. The combats, known as dogfights, were spectacles of aerial acrobatics and life-or-death strategy that could last for agonizing minutes, with high-risk maneuvers every second. Pilots pushed their fighters to the limit, climbing, diving, circling, searching for the perfect firing position while trying to avoid enemy fire. In these fierce dogfights, the MiG-15, despite its power, had an Achilles heel: its tendency to overheat. In prolonged high-performance maneuvers, the MiG's engine often lost efficiency, compromising performance and forcing pilots to reduce power or abort the fight to avoid damage. But the Sabre? Thanks to the Firewall, it held on tight. This thermal protection allowed American pilots to keep the engine at full power, at the limit of its capabilities, for much longer periods of time, without the paralyzing fear of catastrophic mechanical failure. Imagine the confidence this instilled in the pilot, knowing that his plane would not let him down at the most critical moment. This ability to sustain the fight, to keep the pressure on the enemy while the MiG was forced to pull back to cool down, changed everything. It wasn't just a technical advantage, it was an overwhelming psychological advantage. The Firewall didn't just protect the engine, it protected confidence. And confidence in aerial combat was the difference between glory and oblivion.
Between the skies and the dead, on the decks of aircraft carriers or on the makeshift airstrips of Korea, there were men. Men like James Jabara, the first American ace of the Korean War, a fearless pilot who shot down 15 enemy aircraft. And Joseph McConnell, the ace with the most confirmed victories among American fighter pilots in that conflict, with 16 kills. These men, and many others like them, had complete confidence in their sabres. And that confidence was not based solely on the aircraft's impressive speed or agile maneuverability, characteristics that were evident to anyone who had observed an F-86 in action. Their deepest confidence lay in the machine's inner strength, its quiet resilience, including the now legendary Firewall. The stories of these pilots, often told in moving testimonials and mission reports, echo a common sentiment. Many of them testified, their voices choked with memories of combat. The Sabre didn't break. It came back in one piece. It brought us back. That was the catchphrase, the mantra that encapsulated the difference. In a war where seconds, and sometimes fractions of seconds, defined fates, whether returning to base for a well-earned rest or dropping into enemy territory, subject to capture or death, this confidence in the equipment made the difference. It wasn't just the ability to shoot, but the certainty that the machine beneath their feet was a reliable extension of their own will to fight and survive. The Firewall was an invisible part of that certainty, a silent guardian that ensured that the extreme heat of the engines would not fail at the most critical moments. This invisible barrier allowed pilots to remain aggressive, to push the limit, knowing that the heart of their plane was protected. This serenity amidst the chaos, this certainty of durability, freed the pilot to focus solely on tactics, on aiming, on victory. And it was this liberation, this unshakable confidence, that turned good pilots into aces, and that transformed the F-86 Sabre into a living legend.
The F-86 Sabre was not just an aircraft, it was a visionary engineering manifesto, a machine that, even ahead of its time, epitomized the relentless pursuit of air supremacy. While the Firewall was a critical innovation for combat resilience, the Sabre's genius lay in a series of interconnected systems, all designed to maximize pilot efficiency, lethality, and survivability. A cornerstone of this advanced engineering was its A1CM targeting system. At a time when many fighters still relied on rudimentary optical sights, the A1CM was a marvel of analog computing. It could automatically calculate the point of impact based on dynamic variables such as the Sabre's speed, target trajectory, and range, providing the pilot with a precise, real-time firing solution. This exponentially increased the probability of a hit, even in high-speed aerial combat, making the bursts of its 6.5-inch or 12.7mm M3 machine guns a devastating and accurate firepower. Each projectile, fired at an impressive rate of fire, was guided with a precision that was almost futuristic for the time. The Sabre's cockpit, in turn, was a model of ergonomics and functionality. Modern and comfortable, it was optimized to withstand long hours of flight, reducing pilot fatigue. The layout of the instruments, the intuitive controls, and the panoramic visibility ensured that the pilot had total control over the aircraft and situational awareness of the combat.
In addition, the onboard pressurization and oxygen system ensured that even at high altitudes, where the air is thin and the temperatures are freezing, the pilot could maintain his cognitive and physical performance. Everything about the F-86 Sabre was thought and designed for a singular purpose: efficiency, endurance, and ultimately, supremacy in the skies. Every wire, every part, every system, from the engine to the wingtips, contributed to the creation of a war machine that not only flew, but dominated.
The F-86 Sabre represented a quantum leap in military aviation technology, introducing innovations that would become standard in future generations of jet fighters. It was the first American fighter to operate with an effective firing radar, allowing detection and engagement of the enemy beyond visual range, a revolutionary concept for its time. It was also one of the first to receive an integrated fire control system, which orchestrated the sights, radar, and weapons for maximum combat effectiveness. These innovations alone would secure the Sabre its place in the annals of aviation history. Yet, of all its innovations and cutting-edge systems, the Firewall remains the most underrated, the most silent, and, paradoxically, one of the most crucial. It was not a strike system, nor a flight enhancement. It was a protection, a guarantee. The Firewall did not simply protect the pilot from mechanical failure, from the thermal catastrophe that could disintegrate the aircraft in the middle of a maneuver. It did much more than that. It gave time to react. In a combat where every second is an eternity, the pilot's ability to not have to worry about engine overheating or vital systems failing allowed him to focus completely on tactics, evasion, and attack. It gave him room to maneuver. Sabre pilots could push their aircraft to the limits, knowing that the machine would hold up, that the engine would keep roaring, that the controls would not fail. This freedom allowed for more aggressive, riskier maneuvers that would unbalance the opponent and create shooting opportunities. And, fundamentally, the Firewall gave him a chance to win. This chance, multiplied by thousands of combats, by hundreds of pilots, was what turned the tide in the Korean War. It was not a shield that repelled bullets, but a barrier that kept the Sabre operational, allowing its pilots to use their skills and the aircraft's other innovations to achieve victory. It was this ability to maintain persistence in combat that quietly rewrote the script of air supremacy.
The F-86 Sabre transcended its role as a war machine to become an icon. In all, more than 9,800 units were produced, a testament to its success and versatility. Its influence extended far beyond the skies of Korea. It served in more than 20 air forces around the world, from Canada to Australia, from Germany to Japan, adapting to different doctrines and operational needs. It was present in secondary but no less important conflicts, such as the Vietnam War in its early stages, in the Middle East during the Arab-Israeli tensions, and in numerous other regional crises that punctuated the complex formation of the Cold War. It was a pillar of the air defense of several nations, a symbol of Western technological prowess. Today, most F-86 Sabres rest in museums, their polished fuselages reflecting the light of searchlights, their engines silent. They are metal monuments, memories of an era. But its history, its legacy, echoes like thunder in the halls of time, a sound that resonates through the decades. The Sabre remains the symbol of the courage of the men who flew it, the innovation that conceived it, and the resilience that made it invincible in its time. And at the center of this legend, a name echoes silently, a name that should be as revered as the machine it protected: the Firewall, an inconspicuous piece of equipment, but one that was the foundation of supremacy.
a barrier against death, an invisible shield that allowed the Sabre not only to fly, but to conquer the skies.